working outdoors, so we give them awareness seminars, provide snake safety awareness seminars. And then we do displays like this one where we educate you about our snakes. If you're local to this area, you could encounter about 18 different species of snake just in this area around here. But if you're travelling throughout our country, you could encounter up to approximately 200 different species of snake. So quite a large number, and depending on what area, they will vary. So not up to 200 in the one area. This guy, he really wants to come out. So he's sensing it's a nice warm day today. And luckily, this guy is harmless. This is our diamond python. He's peeking out saying, hello, hi everyone. And that's what they're doing at this time of year. We forget about our snakes over winter because they go into that brumation period. So we don't call it hibernation because they don't entirely sleep over winter. It just means with the colder temperatures that they can't digest any food. So they're not as active with hunting. They reduce that hunting behaviour, but if it's a nice warm sunny day in winter, they will come out and bask in that sun. But now it starts to warm up in spring, our snakes come out of that brumation period, and the first thing they want to do is find something to eat because they stopped eating around about April when it started to cool down. So our snakes are just going about their normal day-to-day activities, and at this point it's hunting for their food. They don't really want human interaction. They want to stay away from us because they're actually more scared of us than what most people are of snakes. Now this guy, he's quite common around the coastal areas. So this is our diamond python because he has those diamond rosettes across his back. So obviously this guy doesn't have fangs and he doesn't have venom, but he does have over 110 recurved, very sharp teeth. All of our snakes will eat whole body prey, but with our pythons, they will constrict that prey, and that's how they get a good meal. So he's a nocturnal species. He'll feed on small rats at this size. When he grows up to about 3 metres, he'll move on to larger rats. He may have a feed on some mice. He may have a feed on some birds. If you keep rabbits or guinea pigs, you need to make sure they're in a locked enclosure. It's quite secure because diamond pythons like them as well. But they're not going to eat our kids. Are there any naughty kids around? Yeah. Oh, over here. He's not even going to eat the naughty kids. You don't have to worry. You can keep mucking up for Mum. He's not even going to eat our dogs or our cats. So if you've got him around on your property or around the workplace or around where you're camping, leave him there. He's completely harmless. Now while he's taking care of those rodents and those other pests, and when he's fully grown, he may start to feed on smaller possums. If those rodents or possums get into your roof and urinate in there and it starts to stink, it can be quite stinky, but also they can do a lot of damage as well. So he's going to take care of those pests. But if you have him removed from a snake catcher and you've still got those pests there, snake sense of smell are 100,000 times greater than our sense of smell. So then you may have something dangerously venomous come onto your property that you don't want with your children. And around here, they could be an eastern brown. A lot of eastern brown snakes around here. So keep the harmless guy that's going to take care of that. He could be hanging under your gazebo or under your clothesline, in your shed, and you could be walking straight past him. As long as you're not going to do any harm or try to interfere with him or try to kill him, he's not going to harm you. Would you like me to bring him around so you can have a touch? You good? Just watch that hole over there. Have you got shoes on? Can you just stick your foot on that hole so no snakes escape for when we get the venomous ones out? So he is feeling quite cool at the moment because he hasn't had that opportunity to be... Oh, you're boy, sorry. I'm sorry. Would you like to have a touch? There you go, so good. What about you over the back? You alright? So he doesn't feel like a fish. He's not skatey, is he? he's going up to the highest point. So he'll be looking for the highest point to hang out, because he can keep a watch on things then. If a little mouse comes past, or a rat, or perhaps a bird might be there.
How old is this snake?
This snake is about 10 years of age. He's probably a little bit older actually, about 12, and his name is Dyphon. So do we want to say goodbye to Dyphon? Bye, Dyphon. Bye. Bye. You want another dangerously venomous. So if you get bitten by one of those, it could cause serious harm or death. Now, unfortunately, the majority of those 200 species of snake we have in our country are brown in colour. So it makes it really hard to identify what snake it is just by looking at the colour. If you've travelled overseas, you can tell exactly what snake it is just by looking at the colour or the pattern of it. Where John and I live on the Central Coast, we don't really have a lot of brown snakes around there. We have a lot of green tree snakes, and people call us up and they say they've got a brown snake on their property. And we say, where? What suburb? Because there's only a couple of suburbs on the Central Coast that you'll encounter them. And they send through a photo of a green tree snake. It's bright green, bright yellow underneath, and as much as you tell them it's harmless, they've just seen brown, and it's always 6 foot long. They're always great to go fishing with. They've got these great fishing stories. When John and I go out to remove the snake's too. Black snake, he's quite common around here as well. Now, if people have told you that red bellies keep browns away, it's not true. All of our snakes are cannibalistic, so yes, a red belly, if he's hungry, he hasn't had a feed for a while, he comes across a smaller snake, he may have a feed on that, and that could be a brown. It could be another red belly, it could be another snake, it could be a lizard in his case. But primarily, he likes to feed on frogs and tadpoles, so we'll find him around wetlands, rivers, creeks, streams. If you have dams on your property, that's where you'll find them. You're trying to trip me up. Now, brown snakes prefer to feed on rodents, so we'll find them around the dry areas. So if you've got chook sheds or hay in the dry areas, and that's why there's so many brown snakes around Western Sydney. So they will cross over in habitat, but a brown is just as likely to feed on a red belly or its own kind or whatever. So they don't live together like we do in a family unit. They live as solitary creatures. The only time they come together is at this time of year when it's breeding season. And then the pair are going to separate because they don't want to get eaten by their partner. So the red-bellied black snake, he can grow up to about 2 metres in length. And if you've ever seen snakes twisted around each other, that's snakes combating. It's not snakes mating. A female can give birth to a couple of offspring, maybe 25, maybe more, all in the hope that one of those survives. So they combat to see who's the stronger, the fitter one, the one with the better genes, who's got the more chances of breeding, and then whoever comes out on top, they're not trying to kill each other, but just trying to pin the other one's head down to the ground, they'll get to breed with the female. And then for a red-bellied black snake, she's going to give birth to live young in a clear membranous sac. Now there is no maternal care with our venomous snakes. Not like our python. Our python will sit on a clutch of eggs, keep those eggs at a constant temperature, and make sure that those eggs hatch. For a brown snake who's an egg layer, she may lay them under the side shed. It could be under the toilet facility where you're camping. It could be in the school sand pit, in an area where she thinks is a perfect temperature for those eggs to hatch, and her job's done. The female, if she gives birth to live young, like a tiger snake or a red belly, once those offspring break out of those clear sacs, within 24 hours they're all going to disperse and go their own separate directions, because the stronger the fitter siblings will feed on the other one. So if you come across a baby snake at the end of spring or summer, perhaps even into autumn if they decide to breed again, you don't have to worry about where mummy is or where dad is. They're long gone. And all the babies eventually will go off in their own separate directions and hope to survive. Most of them are going to get plucked off by us. Us humans are the biggest predator. Birds of prey, wild animals, domestic pets, they'll all get preyed upon. So within 3 years, if she has a clutch of 25, there will only be one left. So that's why they have so many babies. Now, red-bellied black snakes can grow up to about 2 metres. They typically like to feed on frogs and tadpoles, so they're very good swimmers. They can spend up to half an hour underwater before they need to reach the surface to take a breath. So not only will they be looking for food, but they can also feed underwater. So if you're camping around a waterway, there can be snakes in the water. And they're also very good climbers as well. So typically, he could climb the sight shed to get up onto the gutter system to get some frogs out of the gutter. But predominantly, they spend their time on the ground. But you know, they could climb. Now, if food is scarce, snake is our death adder. Now, most people won't encounter a death adder, although they are quite common. They are quite common in Western Sydney as well. So, they're unlike our other snakes. They're not an active hunter, they're an ambush predator. And they're also a nocturnal species. So of a night time, they will sit with their head and their tail quite close together in that ambush position. And if you have a close look at his tail tip, it's darker to the rest of his body and it looks like a bit of a worm. This is the average size of a male. Females grow to be larger than the males with death adders. Usually the males grow to be larger with our other snakes, but with death adders it's a female and she can grow up to about 1 metre in length. So this is our Sydney or our common death adder, and it comes in 2 colours, the red or the grey. And it's the grey one that often gets mistaken for a blue-tongued lizard. So of a night time, if a little mouse comes past, or a frog or a lizard, that death adder is going to start to wiggle that tail. It's called cord alluring. And if we put this death adder out in the sun, he would probably do that. He's enticing that animal to come close to that tail tip, and that animal's not even going to see that there's a snake there. In fact, it's going to be that camouflaged in leaf litter or a garden bed or a rocky area or a sandy area, depending on where you are, that you could be standing right on top of that snake and you wouldn't even know that he's there. So as he comes over to inspect that little worm that he thinks it is, the death adder's head is right now. The death adder has the fastest strike of any of our snakes. It's clocked around 160 to 180 kilometres an hour, and then the death adder gets a good feed before the animals even realise what's happened. But for us, it means that we could literally be bitten a couple of times, maybe 2 or 3 times, before we've even realised that we've been bitten by a snake. So if you go camping, you've got your tent or your swag, always lift it high up off the sides when you're packing it up. Never put your hands under the floor, because often campers get bitten by packing up their camping gear, putting their hands under the floor of the tent or their swag. Little snakes get in there and nocturnal species get under there as well. The most snake bite deaths in our country. Tiger snakes don't really like to cohabitate with us like they used to, so we don't see them around as much as our other snakes. They are very common around the Blue Mountains. If you live around the Blue Mountains area, you'll encounter tigers, or the Southern Highlands. They're a very cold climate snake. So they were responsible for the most snake bite deaths in our country up until about 1980. And because of the large number of bites and deaths, the first antivenom was developed in 1930 for tiger snakes. And since then, they've developed antivenoms for black snakes, for adders, for browns, taipans. There's a polyvalent which will treat all snake bite. So if you're in a country town, we don't have to pay for antivenom, but the hospital does, so they may not stock species specific, but they may stock a polyvalent. There's also a sea snake antivenom as well. So the first one in our country was for tiger snakes. Now tiger snakes have been called our gentleman snake and our Australian cobra. If you've seen a cobra, how they flatten out their head, flare out their neck and stand up, that's what tiger snakes would do if you get too close to them. Each snake will have their own defensive posture. Now, tiger snakes will bark. in that position, in that defensive posture. I'm not sure if he'll do it today. He did it when we got him out of his enclosure. But he's a captive tiger. So all of our snakes are bred in captivity. But if you come across a wild snake, he's really going to do that. He's really going to display that defensive behaviour. And you'll really hear that bark. Now, it's not like a dog, but they expel air quite quickly from their mouth. So it sounds like a... So if you hear that noise, stand still. We'll see if he'll do it. He doesn't want to do it probably today. No. Have a close look around. Don't continue to walk, because that's a tiger snake telling you you've got too close. And he wants you to back off and leave him alone. If you do happen to get close to a snake, stand still. Have a look around where you can back away from, where he's got an opportunity to move on. And when you start walking away from him, that's when that snake's going to take that opportunity to move away from you. Never corner the snake into an area in which he can't escape, because that's when he's going to feel threatened, when he may strike and he may bite. If you're out in the bush a lot, always wear thick, loose-fitting long pants and closed shoes. Our snakes have relatively short front fangs. If you were to accidentally step on a snake, that snake will grab a hold of that thick, loose-fitting clothing, and the fangs aren't long enough to penetrate through to the skin. But often when we're in summer and it's quite hot, we go bushwalking with shorts, we've got exposed skin, or you might have tight-fitting pants. You step on a snake, no problems can those fangs penetrate. So if you're working around them or holidaying around in a snake area, make sure you've got that protective clothing. If you're gardening, make sure the same with the upper body. Make sure you've got gloves on. Rate the area first. Check for any movement. Snakes don't have an outer ear like us, but they do have the workings of a middle inner ear. So if you're stomping around, that snake is going to pick up that vibration. So stomp your feet or use a stick, tap that stick as you're walking along, let that snake know that you're coming, and he will either hear you or see you and rather retreat. Wait for you to pass on by, that noise, that commotion to settle down before he ventures back out. If there's logs or rocks that go underneath our skin and travels through our lymphatic system, reaching our lymph nodes before getting into the bloodstream. Now, we have approximately 2,500 people presenting to hospital for snakebite, but only 10% of those people require antivenom. And that's because most of the time the snake isn't going to inject any venom. It just wants us to back away so it can escape. So most of the time it gives us a reach over on the pit at this stage. Ground snakes, they're not aggressive, but they are highly attuned to movement. And the more movement we make, the more they get scared. So they're just a really scared snake. A lot of people say that the brown snake chases them. Well, it could be that that person was moving quite quickly and that brown snake was locked onto that movement. When I tip him out, you'll see that his behaviour, he's already on high alert. Unlike our other snakes, they pretty much just laid there like rubber snakes, didn't they? This guy, he's already in his defensive posture. Mouth wide open, there's a good photo for you. Double S position. In that position, in that defensive behaviour, he has a precise strike. And he's like a coiled spring. So he could pretty much get me in the head when he's nice and warmed up in that defensive posture. Now, if you come across a ground snake that's doing that, the best thing to do is to stand still, don't move, wait for him to settle down, and it could take him a minute or so to lower his body down to the ground. And when he does that, you can slowly back away from him and give him that opportunity to move. But if I was to continue to make that movement, he's going to lock onto that. And we don't want him to do that. So, although it may seem quite daunting, when you see a snake, I get it, it is going to surprise you. But it will save your life if you stand still and don't make any sharp, fast movements. You can see he relaxes. But the minute I move again, he stands up in that defensive posture. Now, brown snake is probably the worst name for him because he could be any colour. You may come across a brown snake that's black in colour, orange or green. This guy here, you can see he's got some banding on him, very faint banding. You may come across one that's got stronger bands. Juveniles will have a black patch above the head and a black nape across the back of the neck, and as they mature, that nape disappears and that black patch above the head lightens, so they always have that dark patch. But his head blends into the rest of his body. He doesn't have a bigger head like the tiger snake. If you looked at the death adder, his head, it was like a triangular shape. And he has that ridge or that brow above his eye and that sunken in eye, so he already has an evil appearance to him. And they are very common around here, around the Blue Mountains area, down to Southern Highlands, sort of misses the Central Coast, but you will get them up around the Hunter. There's a lot around the Hunter, very dry around there, so a lot of brown snakes around there. So, he's smiling again, guys. Did you see his big smile? Yeah. So, these guys, not only do they have the neurotoxin, they also have the hemotoxins found in their venom. And those hemotoxins do a couple of things. First of all, causing tiny little blood clots. Then those blood clots dissipate, and that's when we start to bleed out. You can see here, actually, he's looking for that crease in the canvas here. If he could hide in there, which he could quite easily, you wouldn't even know that he's there. And that could be under a concrete slab around home, a retaining wall. If you've got any holes or cracks or gaps, fill them up. Concrete or expanding foam. If you can fit a finger under the gap of your door, make sure you put those lockable weather strips down to close those gaps up at the bottom of the door. Fly screens fitted to your windows and doors. Snakes don't really want to come into our home, but if it's a hot day and you've got your door wide open, it may be inviting for a snake to chill out and hang for a while, because he doesn't want to be caught out in that heat either. There is no snake propeller or chemical that you can use to keep snakes away. Monash University actually did a 2-year study on those snake repellers and found that they attracted snakes because they emit an ultrasonic pulse. And the snake will sit there thinking it's a heartbeat. We'll sit on top of the snake repeller or underneath waiting for a rodent or a lizard to come along. So don't invest in them. There is no chemical. It comes down to common sense things. Keeping your grass short. No overgrown garden beds. Instead of having low-lying bushes and shrubs, have plants where the foliage is up high off the ground. You've got a nice clear view. Make sure your yard is clear of rubbish. Put rubbish in a litter bin, and then you're going to have less pests around the property. Snakes will be able to smell those pests from a couple of kilometres away. So just some smart things there, just to make your home look less attractive to our snakes. And then you won't have so much of a problem. If you need to store anything, put it on a pallet like your firewood, so when you go to get it, you're not going to put your hands into where you can't see. You've got a clear view underneath it. Now, our snakes do some good. They are used in the medical world each and every day. So I spoke about our antivenoms. They do extract venom for the manufacture of our antivenom, but they also do it for scientific and research purposes and medical purposes. They've just discovered a component of brown snake venom can kill tumours in breast cancer. So they're doing clinical trials to see if there's a treatment for breast cancer from their venom. Same with bee venom as well. Next time you go to get your blood taken at pathology, have a look in the larger test tubes. Down the bottom there's a gel, and inside that gel there's a component of taipan venom. So venom suppliers down in South Australia, they've got that contract to supply that component of taipan venom. So when your blood's collected and it's kept under refrigeration, it doesn't separate, it doesn't coagulate, and they've got time to test on it. So whether it's for cancer or hematology or cardiovascular, there are good uses. There's probably a cure for every illness and disease worldwide derived from our venoms. So learn to live with our snakes. Don't try to harm them or interfere with them or try to kill them, because that's when we get bitten. Kids, if you see a snake, call out to an adult, tell them that there's a snake there. If you do have a snake on your property or around the workplace, get a snake catcher to come out and safely remove it. Because most bites happen to 18 to 35-year-old males after some alcohol consumption. It's a true fact. So if we learn to look after our snakes, perhaps one day they may look after us and save our lives. Thanks guys, I hope you enjoyed our show. John will be doing the next show. I think, did I go a little bit over time? I'd like to talk a little bit. 2:30, so in about 45 minutes, if you'd like to come back and listen to John's show and see our snakes again. If you'd like any first aid kits, another question.